to Homekeepers. How are you today, my friend? I hope you're having a good day, and it's good to be with you. I'm just so thankful that we have the opportunity to be here and that you have tuned in today. I believe with all of my heart this program is going to be one that is absolute inspiration. After you hear the testimony of my guest, Susan Hafner. And before we go into that, I just want to make sure that you all feel real welcome. Can you grab a cup of tea and just join us? Probably we've got brand new viewers. God bless you. Please don't let it be the last time. And to the regular viewers, you are part of us, and we appreciate you more than we can say. I've mentioned this to you before that, you know, I was raised in a Christian home and stayed with it, thank God. And so some people could say, well, that's just the way you were raised, and you did stay with it, but it doesn't prove much. Well, that could be some people's opinion, but the guest today, you can't come to any conclusion except there's a supernatural God interested in the affairs of human beings. Because my guest today, when you hear her story, she was practically raised in a bar. It's one of the most amazing stories I've ever heard in my life, and that as a young person, she heard 3 words from a minister, just said, God loves you, that's all. And it changed her life forever, and now she has a great ministry. So I want you to meet Susan. And we've got chicken and biscuits bacon in here today. We like to bring you recipes that we think you can really use and maybe things you can afford. And so I'm going to join Stephanie in a minute. But before we do, just take note of this. After you hear her story, you'll be very interested. And this is a book, the title One Touch, by my guest today, Susan Lana Hafner. And it tells her story of salvation, of life, like it's very hard to describe, so we'll let her do that when she comes. But I want to offer it to you now, and then as websites and so forth come up, you can make a decision if you would like to have it after you hear her. And for that gift of at least $20, we'll send it to you. I think I can guarantee that if you start it, you won't be able to put it down. And what an inspiration, something to give to other people. So if you use a credit card, it's 1-800-229-0059, or write to us at Box 6922, Clearwater, Florida, 33758, and we'll get it to you. So, how are you today, darling?
Wonderful, doing great. How are you?
Good. You still saving lots of money and getting your debts paid off?
Mm-hmm. You have to be diligent.
Yeah, if you don't watch all the time, I really sincerely believe that Stephanie represents a big, big part of this nation. And she and her husband are getting out of debt, and they're just happier. You're happier before than you were before.
For sure.
And she was my guest one day, and we talked about it, and it's very, very encouraging. We kind of owe it all to Dave Ramsey, don't we? He's the one that put the spotlight on it.
Yep, that's for sure.
So, okay, this chicken and biscuits.
Okay, you have the topping. You have a cup of flour, and you have a quarter cup of sour cream, and you have 3 tablespoons of milk, and you're going to mix those together just gently, just till it's all moist. And then I have a can.
Paste. I told you I used to eat paste in kindergarten.
No,
somebody wrote to me about that. I said, well, didn't you?
I don't think I did.
I remember just licking my fingers, and there was a great big jar of it
That's
until the
funny.
teacher caught me.
Okay, so I have a can of cream of chicken soup. I have some sour cream. It's about 3/4 cup.
Well, you hear of chicken and dumplings, and this is close.
This is real close. Super easy, though, and super economical.
Yeah, and you know,
just a bag of frozen mixed veggies.
There's so many things, even on the Food Network, where you use partially prepared stuff. And makes a lot of sense. Women are working nowadays.
Yeah.
Should I just
quit? Till it's a little, so it's a little bit, yep, that's perfect.
Okay.
And then we're going to put the chicken. You have 2 cups of...
2 cups of chicken. This was a rotisserie chicken.
And you could get like 2, or if you did it right, you could get 2 or 3 meals out of a rotisserie chicken. And they're only $5 or $6, so that's really economical.
Right, or if you find a chicken on sale, just get your own, stick it in the oven.
Yep, yep. And then we have a cup of cheese.
Get this stuff out of the way so we can enjoy.
Yeah. So we have a big pan here, and it's already sprayed. You always want to spray.
Yep.
So I'll get this all mixed up and put in here.
Nice and colorful. Now you would do this before you come to work.
Oh, sure. Definitely. You could do this and freeze it, and you could just pull it right out of your freezer.
That's something we like to stress because, you know, we can make life easier for people.
Oh, so
a little organization, a little planning.
Exactly.
And then you're not so when you go to the table.
I'm 2 weeks into my shopping for a month little experiment, and it's going great.
So you plan your meals for a whole month?
Mm-hmm. Yep, and just having a plan takes stress away.
Well, you weren't here when we had a guest by the name of Debbie Titus, who wrote The Table Experience. Mm-hmm. And I thought I would give anything if I'd had that book when my kids were little. That family meal is so important. So you shouldn't sit down at the table mad at the kids and mad at your husband. And,
right.
And she went back to Exodus where the first table that they could find in the Bible was built. And it was the same height as your kitchen table today.
Really?
Yes. It should be, in your mind, it should be a sacred gathering place.
Yes, yes. So we're just taking the little mixture that you did, and we're just doing 6 little dollops on the top. And then you bake it for 35 minutes, and it comes out delicious.
And we've got something beautiful here.
Look at that.
Oh,
that is comfort food right there.
That's your meal. Would your family like this?
Oh, sure.
Would they?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, let's see. It's really hot. We don't want to burn ourselves, do we? Oh, wow.
Look at that. You could easily make this for under $5. Easy.
Yeah.
That's how frugal it would be.
There we go.
Thank you.
Get a little bit of everything here. I don't want to burn my mouth. You try it first. It's hot.
It's very hot.
Okay, talk to me while this cools. These poor viewers have so many memories of me burning my mouth.
That's like a chicken pot pie. Mm-hmm. That is an easy chicken pot pie right there.
I tell you, it's about as good as any chicken pot pie I've ever had. Now, I love chicken pot pie.
Really delicious.
But when you look at the calories, if you buy those frozen ones,
it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Crazy.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's good stuff right there.
This is good. So, if you want a copy of this recipe, we'll get it to you. The information's coming up on your screen. And I'm always asking you 1 to 10. What would you name this?
Oh, 8.5, easy. Maybe 9.
I think everything we do is at least a 10.
Yeah. Okay, I'm trying to be nice.
Stay with me. I want you to meet my friend Susan and hear an amazing testimony. It's going to bless you. So information's coming up for this, and I'll have one more bite before I join Susan. Okay?
Sounds good.
If you would like a copy of today's recipe, please send your request along with a gift of $5 or more to Homekeepers, P.O. Box 6922, Clearwater, Florida 33758.
Okay, my guest is Susan Hafner, and I have met her a couple times before and seen the grace of God in a way that is very, very special. You don't run into it a lot, this type of story. Welcome, Susan.
Oh, I'm so glad to be with you, Artheline.
I am anxious for the viewers to hear your story, but before we do, I want to talk just a little bit about the ministry. Now, Susan will be on my next program as well, where we're going to elaborate on the ministry, but I did mention her book, and I want you to be curious, okay? It's going to be about pillows and blankets and pretty stuff, bags like this, and CDs and all, and with one continuing message. So you'll have that to look forward to, especially on the next program. Where I know you're from Louisiana now. Where were you born?
Actually in Oregon, the state of Oregon, but grew up in Miami, Florida.
Mm-hmm. Now you had the most unusual childhood I've ever read about. Your mom was mentally ill, but alcoholic as well, and you went with her everywhere. Did she own a bar, or did she work in bars?
Yeah, she either worked in a bar or owned a bar, yes.
And so from a very young age, you worked in a bar.
Well, I helped out. When we owned bars, I served drinks as young as I can remember. I'd get on my tiptoes and I could mix a drink and serve them to the patrons, yes. And
how many schools did you go to by the time you ended up in high school?
One or two a year, sometimes 3 a year. But every year we changed schools for sure, usually 2 or 3 schools, yeah, because of the men in our lives. We had a lot of men in and out of our household.
Yes, and you grew up in an atmosphere that's so foreign to what any child should grow up in the same room with sex going on, or even in the same bed. And I was just wondering, that's all you knew. Did you think that's the way everybody was raised?
Yeah, that's what I always say, that, it wasn't good and then it got bad. That was all I ever knew. And I grew up an only child, and my mother was my life. I adored my mother. My dad, they divorced when I was about 3 1/2 or 4, and he became a transient. He just roamed the country. So all I had was my mom. I don't know anybody that ever prayed for me, and so I stuck by my mama's skirt tail in the middle of absolute chaos.
Yeah, and so that kind of a life was the norm for you?
It was the normal, yes. I don't remember really, when people would, children will look at toys, or they'll look out the window and say, oh, I wish I had that. I don't remember ever saying I wish or I want, because my life revolved around my mom. She would introduce me, Artheline, saying, this is the little girl that God gave me to take care of me. And so I learned early on that was my role in life, and I wanted to take care of her. I wanted to be with her. Yeah.
So that was the norm for you?
That was the norm.
I think I read that you had your first drink at the age of 9.
Yes.
You never became alcoholic, though, did you?
No, I didn't, no. Because, again, life wasn't about me wanting something. It was about taking care of her and trying for her not to drink, and trying to break up drunken brawls, and, her being beat up, and I was always there worrying about her at the youngest I can remember.
How did you keep up in school if you went from one city to the next? Overall, how did you do in school?
Well, I was about average. Pretty much I was average in everything I did. I didn't want to excel, and I didn't want to do bad because I didn't want to be noticed. I'd rather just be a fly on the wall and nobody noticed me, because generally when I got noticed, it meant abuse. My mother was legally married 7 times. I lived with her in 3 common law marriages, and then we just had a parade of men in and out. And of course, you alluded to her alcoholism, but she was mentally ill. Her mental illness was she was obsessive compulsive, and she thought people were going to poison her, and literally thought I was going to poison her, everybody around her. And back then, people didn't really know how to treat mental illness, I don't think, so she self-medicated with alcohol, and her whole life was consumed by mental illness and alcoholism, and a little girl just was in the shadows. I didn't have anybody to nurture me or try to see after me. She could hardly take care of me.
Do you look back and say, I was happy, I was unhappy, I was miserable? That's just the way life was? You just accepted it?
I was miserable when my mother was miserable. When my mother was unhappy, I was unhappy, but not about me. Again, that's the way I was raised. I knew nothing else.
And your whole focus was to please her?
Exactly.
Did you ever get in any arguments and things with her?
Very seldom. It was usually her. She had a way of punishing me, and this sounds really bad. I believe my mother loved me the best she could, but she was consumed with her addictions. But she found out I would be afraid to ride in the car when she was drinking or all the men were drinking. I was scared in the car. We'd have an accident. And her punishment for me sometimes was she'd get mad. She didn't think I cleaned up the house or whatever. It's get in the car. And she'd go driving wildly down the highway. And sounds a little bizarre, but again, that was just the way life was.
The whole thing is bizarre. As you became a teenager and high school and all, isn't that when things started to say, I'm not accepted, nobody cares?
Exactly. We moved around so much, I didn't know what normal was, but when I got to high school and started seeing how people, they had clubs, they had different things, and I started feeling really like a dud. I don't fit in at school. And I went all through my high school years. I felt like I had preschool skills in high school. I mean, I didn't know how to socialize. My socialization was with my mother's age group. So I went all the way to my being a senior in high school, and sit in at recess. We'd get out of school, I'd go with my mom to the bars or out of town with a man or whatever.
Because that's a time in your life when you're so self-conscious and you want to feel accepted, but your whole life to that point had been, I think you used the term, in the shadows, that you were just kind of, nothing really to be observed. And there came a time, and of course kids that age can be kind of mean. I think they're meaner now than then from everything we hear. But did anybody ever make fun of you or criticize you or just ignore you in high school?
I always say that if you looked at my life on a heart monitor, I was flatlined. So people didn't notice me, really pay attention to me because I didn't do anything. I was just quiet and very introvert.
And you kind of wanted it that way, didn't you?
Oh, yes, absolutely, yes. I didn't know how. If you asked me about anything in a social setting, I just would, blah, 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 blah. I didn't know how to talk about things like that.
If any of the high school girls your age had kind of reached out, would you have known what to do? Or
I think I would have gravitated toward nurturing. I don't know anybody that ever prayed for me. I didn't have people, and I didn't spend the night with any friends. I think if the right type of spiritual reaching out to me, I probably would have responded, because, as you know, when I did, I responded.
Oh, certainly in a big way. Now, one of your goals was to have somebody to sit with in the lunchroom. That is so sad. But I wonder how many young people are out there today who just wish they had somebody to. That's the loneliest part of your life if you don't have friends at that point. And so did you kind of hang around some girls kind of from a distance? Did anyone ever reach out to you? Because I know that at one point somebody invited you to church.
Yes. Well, my mother's addictions were at the height, and she thought people were going to poison her, including me. I was very skinny, and so when we'd eat a meal, we'd eat at TV stands. We didn't have nice sit-down meals. I didn't know what that was about.
You didn't even know how to do it, hardly.
No. And we'd sit at TV stands, and you didn't get up. If you got up, Mother thought that maybe you threw some poison in her plate, and she would literally push it down your mouth, me or their stepfathers or the men. And so you sat. So when you go to school, you have a cafeteria, and that would be nice to have. And I would think about that sometimes. But I'd go and I'd be so afraid to sit with somebody. They didn't want me there. They're happily talking and having a good time. They didn't want me to sit at their table. That's what I thought. And then if there's an empty chair, I'd stick out like a sore thumb. And so, yes, it was extremely uncomfortable. And so this particular day, there was 3 empty chairs, and I went and sat in the middle one. And these girls were talking about this revival. I didn't know what a revival was. And they were talking about a revival at this church. And the story never gets old. It's just as real. The grace of God is just as real to me today.
Up to that point, did you know anything about God at all?
I didn't know anything. I'd been to church, but I didn't understand it. I'd been, just to two different men that were maybe in church. We'd wind up there, but I didn't have a clue what was going on. So they talked and they invited me to go. And when you've grown up in a dysfunction, you become very quick on your feet and very hypervigilant. And so when they invited me, I immediately started thinking, if I go to their church, maybe I could have somebody to eat lunch with. Here I'm a senior in high school, sit in at recess. This would be a good opportunity.
That was your whole motivation?
My whole motivation, yeah.
Sit with somebody at lunch?
Exactly.
That is so sad.
So that was that Friday night, and my life wasn't my own. And we went out, my stepfather was working out of town, and so we drove 60 miles or so to another town with a man, got one motel room, and all the things that go on in one motel room, and we're there. And
you're in high school by that time?
I'm a senior in high school, yeah.
Oh my.
And so all I could think was, and there's a little story about animals that get caught in a trap and they don't know how to survive, and they literally will chew off one of their legs to get out of the trap. Mm-hmm. And I believe that early on in my life, I chewed off an emotional part of me. Mm-hmm. And to survive. I just, so I just zone out. Mm-hmm. And got back late that Sunday afternoon, and I thought, oh no, these, forget having lunch with anybody. They're not even going to like me. And I remembered they said the revival was going on to Sunday night, and I didn't know if it was okay to go. They hadn't invited me for Sunday night, but I thought, well, I'll chance it. Went, sat in the parking lot, watched where people went in the church, followed a group of people, sat on the second to the last pew. And the girl that invited me, I sat by her. And so they gave an invitation. I don't remember anything that went on in the church. I didn't understand anything the preacher said. But they gave an invitation, and I didn't know what that was. And she went up to go rededicate her life. Well, I thought she was going to the bathroom or she's going to leave. And I couldn't let her out of my sight because I had memorized a 5-word speech. And I kept rehearsing all during, I guess I didn't hear the preacher because I was rehearsing my speech. See you at lunch tomorrow. And so she goes up the aisle to rededicate her life, and so I follow her because I think, the whole reason I'd come is to give her my speech. We get up to the front. I wasn't aware church is still going on, and she's talking to the minister, and I'm standing there, just going, see you at lunch tomorrow. I was going to casually wave to her. We get in the parking lot. I could see the whole thing. I'd visualized it. See you at lunch tomorrow. And so she told the minister, pray for the girl next to me. I don't know if she's a Christian. So he turned to me and started talking to me. I didn't have any clue what he was saying. And then, as fast as only God can do it, he said, God loves you.
3 words.
3 words. With no fanfare or anything. I was major born again. Born again like anybody can be born again. My life was forever changed. I smiled at him, and I haven't stopped smiling.
Boy, that is just beyond explanation. Just those 3 words. I've never quite heard this kind of a born-again experience, but it's certainly borne the fruit through the years. There's
Yes.
absolutely no question that it happened. Where did your life go from there? Did you go home and tell your mother, or did you even know for sure what had happened?
I was born again. I didn't understand it. I didn't know what it was, but I knew he loved me and I loved him. I went out behind my house. The lights were off and she was sleeping, and I just looked up in the sky and I said, you love me and I love you. You love me. And I started running around my house just because I was so over-energized with the presence of God. I didn't understand any of it, but I knew he loved me. I didn't know it with my head. Nobody explained it to me. I just was born again.
And your life was such, though, that, dysfunction isn't the good term. It's so much, I would say, more bizarre than that. And at about that point, your mom was drinking like 1/5 and a half of scotch a day. I didn't know you could do that and survive.
I know. It's almost medically impossible, but as long as I ever knew her, she drank. And at the height of her alcoholism, she was drinking that much.
And add that to mental illness and all.
Yes.
Did you make friends with the girls, and did you get to eat lunch with them?
Oh, yes. I had many friends after that. I still didn't know how to socialize. It took a long time for me to understand how to interact. But when I got to school that next day, I couldn't stop talking about God. And that's all
you didn't know anything about
I didn't know
him.
anything about him. I just talked about him loving me, and then I started going to church, and I'd just cry through the whole service. I'd hang on to every word. And do you know that the familiar sometimes causes us to overlook the precious? It's just as real today as it was then. I've never wanted to leave God. Nobody had to make me go to church. I'd stay down at that little Baptist altar on a regular basis praying for my mother.
And we just about have 1 minute left, but don't forget she's going to be on the next program because there's still a lot of ground to cover. Eventually, your mother did meet God, and she's in heaven today, isn't that right?
Absolutely. Had the same kind of experience I had, except God woke her up in the middle of the night.
How do you explain grace? You know, with the kind of life she lived and the kind of life she put you through. Just about the worst I've really ever heard, because we haven't gotten the real details. But that grace of God just embraced her.
Yes.
As quickly as you, the abused. Mm-hmm. He embraces the abuser.
Yes.
It's just the most magnificent story. I can hardly wait till the next program, my friend. So be sure that you make note to join us, and we'll continue on because she's got married. I wondered how you could ever be married with a background like that, you know, and be a wife and all that. We'll get into that a little bit, and we'll get into this wonderful, wonderful ministry. But let me remind you, we've barely touched the surface, but this book is available to you for that gift of at least $20. And I can almost guarantee that when you start to read it, you won't be able to lay it down. But this story is so much bigger. Just don't miss the next program, because we're going to talk about a ministry that is literally reaching parts of the world, especially our military, and it has to do with pillows. Now, you'll have to tune in, won't you? So join me next time, remembering there's no higher calling than that of a homekeeper. God bless you.
If you would like a video copy of today's Homekeepers program for just $19.95, call 1-800-229-0059 for credit card orders, or send a gift of at least $19.95 to Homekeepers, P.O. Box 6922, Clearwater, Florida 33758. Be sure to note the program number which appears on your screen.
Are you looking for a common sense approach to better health?
I'm Dr. Richard Becker, and this is my wife, Cindy.
Watch Your Health weekdays here on CTN Christian Television Network.
Your Health features daily health news, holistic health experts, insight into dietary supplements, and on-air answers to your health calls.
And join me in the kitchen as we make healthy foods to restore your health and vitality.
That's weekdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, right here on CTN.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lynn Howes, and I'm the host of That You Might Have Life. You know, the gospel is not about rules, it's about a relationship. It's not about fear, it's about faith. It's not about laws, it's about love. It's not about a law you can keep, it's about a life that'll keep you. Jesus said, I came to give you life, and that more abundantly. If that speaks to your heart, I want you to take time to tune in every Tuesday morning at 9:30 and join us for the program That You Might Have Life.
Hi, I'm Marilyn Hickey, and I'm so excited about being on CTN again. And our program today with Marilyn and Sarah, listen to this, will be on every weekday morning at 7 a.m., and that's Eastern Standard Time. So, you know, the early bird gets the word. Get up, get the word, let the word absolutely transform your day. That's what the word can do. It can change any circumstances. See you.
God's love, elevating, energizing, empowering.